And today's guest is Sarah Vallely. Did
Oh,
I say that right?
it rhymes with Galilee, so it's Vallely.
Valley. Oh, my
Yes.
Lord. She's a lead instructor and coach and founder of TSD Mindfulness Meditation Center and has been teaching mindfulness and meditation for over 20 years. So, welcome, Sarah. Tell us, a little bit about yourself and how you started the TSD Mindfulness Meditation Center.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been teaching meditation and mindfulness for 20 years. In the beginning, I was actually teaching children. And so I started certifying, training adults how to teach meditation to children. So that was years
Mhm.
ago. And over the years, things have changed a little bit. And now I train adults how to teach other adults
Mhm.
mindfulness. I also train adults how to be coaches, mindfulness coaches, and I also do mindfulness coaching myself. And the difference between taking a mindfulness class with me and the coaching is in the class I teach a sitting practice, but in the coaching I don't teach a sitting practice. I teach 5-minute exercises that people use during the day that really shift their stress around. They really can reduce their stress to a great degree.
Yeah, I think we all need to learn those 5-minute exercises.
Mhm.
So, but what caused you to start your center? I mean, was it from a personal experience or was it just from you saw a need and no one else was feeling that need, so you decided to, start it?
Well, I've always been training people to teach, and I I had been doing that through a different organization for a while called Sacha International, and I ended up
Mhm.
closing that because that was primarily geared towards children and teaching meditation to children. And so I was reinventing myself, as a lot of us do. And so
Right.
I was reinventing myself as someone who's training adults to teach other adults and training coaches. And I also work with healers and therapists. Uh, and also just people who just want to learn mindfulness. They don't necessarily want to go through a certification program. So yeah, so I started the center to encase all of those programs that I teach, and they're all online. Yeah, so I work
Mhm.
with people all over the world. I have students in Vietnam, Australia, all over the U.S., Virgin
Wow.
Islands. Yeah, so I love that part. It's really nice
I
to.
know. It's so nice to, with our technology today, that we're able to um, talk to whoever we want, no matter where they are.
Mhm.
I'm just waiting for the day where I get my first video call from space. You know,
That's gonna be awesome. I mean, we could FaceTime with someone in space.
I know. Teach them to meditate.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's
I know
good.
it's not that far off. I mean, I'm sure Elon Musk does it all the time. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they've got something worked up there. Maybe
yeah,
they use their iPhones, who knows? I mean, there's satellites everywhere. I don't know how
I
that works.
know.
Yeah.
So tell us about the mindfulness, the unique stress types that there are, and how identifying those can help us, on our day to
Mhm.
day.
Yeah. So TSD mindfulness, it stands for tame the mind, soothe the gut, and dwell in the heart. So the
Mm,
idea is that if we are experiencing stress, well, we all have things going on in our lives that are
hmm.
stressful. We're all
Right.
moms, all this stuff's going on. But you can
Exactly.
watch one mom and compare it to another mom, and one mom will get really stressed out about something and another mom won't, for example. And so the
Hmm.
idea is that it's what's going on in our emotional psychological system that's actually increasing our stress. It's making it worse.
Hmm.
So that's where I come in with the TSD approach, is to identify what in your system is actually making your stress worse, and then directly approaching that, addressing that. And so these stress types come out of that philosophy. There's 7 different stress types. So the first stress type is the thinker. And the
Hmm.
thinker is someone who the majority of their stress comes from their own thinking, right? Their rumination,
Yeah.
their worry, catastrophic thinking.
Right.
right. We've all met people like this, or we're one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so another stress type would be the activated. And the activated is someone that doesn't really get too carried away with their thoughts. And they might not have a lot of past trauma, but they are getting their sympathetic nervous system triggered quite a bit and are having trouble
Hmm.
soothing their nervous system, basically.
Right.
And so that stress type is going to do really well with learning some exercises and some mindfulness approaches that help them specifically soothe their nervous system.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and there's a few more stress types. I don't have to go through them all, but another common one is the concerned. And the
Hmm.
concerned is someone who is they've got a lot of worry thoughts going on, and they've got a lot
Hmm.
of fight or flight triggers going on. So it's like really in a lot of worry and concern on a regular basis. And so those a combination of some
Right.
exercises for quieting their mind
I
with.
mean, reading these, a lot of them are kind of self-explanatory, but okay, yeah, I might be considered a thinker, but what do I do with that? So I think we had done, when we did um, our meet and greet, we had done a little quiz.
Mhm.
And so what was I? Well, I think mine was
You were the concerned. Yeah.
yeah.
So what came up with you? Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you had some scores that showed that the majority of your stress is a combination of you getting into these fight or flight triggers, your nervous system getting activated,
Hmm.
and then that in turn is probably triggering all these worry thoughts in your mental capacities, right? And so that combination is what's causing you the most stress. So for you personally, what would really help is to learn something like the practice of noting, which is being stopping for a moment, even during the day, and noticing what kind of thinking you're in, and if you're in that worried thinking that is causing. I mean, it's not helping, right? It's to identify it, say, "Huh, I'm noticed that I'm in this worry thinking cycle. I'm just going to kind of step back from this and notice it in a mindful way and not really get
Yeah.
interact with it. And then also some strategies for soothing your gut would be really helpful. Also, those your nervous system.
Yeah. I mean, I could really, I mean, when you said it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's me to a T because, and as the day goes on, like toward the end of the day, it's worse, you know? And when I'm done, I'm done working, I have this whole list that pops up in my head. And I'm like, oh, Lord, I don't have time to get everything done, and
Mhm.
then I'm like, give up and I don't do anything.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
yeah, and that can happen with that stress type as you kinda get into this freeze mode, right?
yeah.
Overwhelm. Yeah, that's really common. Yeah, so for me, my personal stress type is called the survivor, and so this is a stress type that is really typical for trauma survivors, and so I've been through
Mhm.
trauma, and so what goes on with me is I've got this past trauma, I'm having, occasionally getting my trauma re-triggered, getting into feelings of abandonment, loss, grief, things like
Mhm.
that. And then also, then that's triggering my thoughts, and I'm going to these like thought cycles because us trauma survivors, we believe that we can just think ourselves out of anything, right? Our brains are going in overdrive because we're like, yeah, I can do this, I can get through this, I can overcome this. But my fight or flight triggers aren't really. I don't get triggered as much, or I can move
Uh-huh.
through them pretty quickly. So
Right.
that's my stress type.
So when someone, so first of all, you would identify what type of person they are. And then, like one of the things you mentioned was taking a few minutes out of the day and just assessing your mood and how you're reacting.
Mhm.
So I'm assessing myself and I feel like I'm out of control. What do I do?
Mhm. Yeah, so there's a couple different things you could do. With your stress type, the first thing I would recommend is to pay attention to what's going on in your physical gut area, in your abdomen, and notice, like,
Mhm.
is there tension there? Do I feel like I'm kind of triggered on a physical level? It's
Okay.
the fight or flight is very physical. So first, really being mindful of that, like what's going on with my body? Do I feel triggered on a physical level?
Mhm.
And there's a few different exercises that you can do to soothe yourself out of that. One that's really, it sounds simple, but it's so helpful. I call it the 4 and 5. Think of 4 things during 5 minutes that bring you feelings of stability. So that might be a certain relationship that just brings you a sense of calm. It might be your home. It might be your
Mhm.
job. It might be the mountains or the ocean. And
Right.
Pick
Right.
yeah, pick a few of those and just spend some time thinking about those, and that actually can really just bring you out of fight or flight. That's an example.
Wow. But you just have to start practicing taking time out and recognizing and paying attention,
Definitely,
right?
yeah, yeah, and then the other thing is once you can kind of get some stability there, or during, depending on what you wanna do, notice what thoughts are connected to this fight or flight
Mhm.
response. You know,
Mhm.
what are you worrying about? And that knowledge of knowing, the reason I'm going into this worry thinking is because I'm in a fight or flight trigger right now. And
Right.
so you can use some redirection to just literally shift your attention to something else so you're not in those worried thoughts. And so that might be the sounds in the room, or that might be looking out your window and looking at
Mhm.
a tree. And that sounds like, oh, that's not going to work. When I'm stressed, I can't just look at something. But if you combine
No.
that with that soothing
Mhm.
the gut, it really can be very helpful.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that because now that it's nice out, I've been going out and just sitting like on my swing or out back with the dog or whatever, and just getting that fresh air and just not thinking about the current situation for the moment. I mean, it really kind of it can bring you down off of that high anxiety that you got yourself up on. So
Mhm.
yeah, I can totally relate to that. The thing of it is just stopping yourself and doing that,
Mhm.
making that first step.
Mhm.
Cause people I don't know about other people, but I will get in this cycle where I feel like I'm like I have a racetrack in my head
Mhm.
and it's just going, going, going. And it's I if I don't recognize it, and a lot of times I don't recognize it until I've said something that hurt somebody's feelings, because
Mhm.
they just came in and asked a question and then I was just short with them. And I'm like, oh, I probably need to take a break, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So what would be like the worst case scenario, with one of the stress types?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if we are having these thought cycles that I'm talking about that can be really difficult, ruminating about the past, reliving something that happened in the past and picking it
Hmm.
apart, picking ourselves apart, moving into
Yeah.
devaluing ourselves, telling ourselves on some level that we're less of a person because of a circumstance or an
Oh
emotion.
yeah.
So,
Hmm.
all that's going on in our psyche, basically, in our cognition. And then we're also getting to these fight or flight triggers and having trouble getting out. And then we're also dealing with this past trauma. I call that the heart, like it's the past traumas in the heart. And so when all of this is going on, I call that the griever. And
Oh
someone who's in that situation, they might not know, be completely aware
yeah.
that they are grieving, but really on a deep level, that's what's going on. They're grieving possibly that they didn't have a healthy childhood. They're
Hmm.
grieving possibly that they weren't able to pursue the career they wanted to because they had so much anxiety. Uh,
Right.
Relationships, it's hard to maneuver relationships when you're the griever. So they're grieving that. And the self-compassion piece is so important for grievers or any of the stress types that have to do with past trauma. Same with mine, the survivor.
Hmm.
It's key to that. And the self-compassion, a lot of it's validation, validating yourself, because probably there's not a lot of other people that are going to do it. Validate yourself.
Right.
Say, it's totally understandable that you're feeling sad. It's totally understandable that you're feeling hurt. That's a great place to
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
And then adding even more self-compassion to that and saying, even though I have the feeling of rejection, I'm loved, I'm worthy, I'm
Yeah.
connected. This doesn't in any way make me lesser of a person.
Wow. That's really good. I really like that, we need to give ourselves permission, to have these feelings and to recognize them and to say it's okay to have these feelings. And then figure out the steps to work toward being better about it. And again, that would be another thing where they would have to recognize that they're, you know, um, I guess it's all in their, I don't want to say all in their head. I don't think that's the right phrase, but um, it would be them just doing this cycle in their brain.
It is kind of like they're in their head because it's that shame and that devaluing piece, right?
Uh-huh.
When we validate ourselves for our circumstances, our process, our emotions, then we
Hmm.
really address those shame cycles and those devaluing thoughts because those we are devaluing ourselves mostly because
Hmm.
we don't think it's okay that we're feeling the way that we're feeling, or we don't think it's okay that we did what we did. So
Right.
that validation piece can be hugely helpful. Mhm.
Right. I just wonder how, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I feel like growing up, we weren't allowed to talk about, these different feelings or things that happen to us. Um, I mean, I don't know. I just know from my experience. Um, but I feel like now people are opening up to talk about these things
Mhm,
that may have happened to them.
mhm,
And it may be totally unique to them and their circumstance, or how they were raised, or their adulthood, or whatever. I i just think it's a good thing that we're able to open up and discuss these different types of stress types and offer help to somebody. And like you said at the beginning, you might have two of the same people. One may go through something and it'll totally knock them over. And then someone else
mhm,
may go through something similar and they're like, no big deal. But
mhm,
they have their own thing that, you know, derails them.
mhm,
I think it's just how we react, to different situations. So, and
mhm,
that's what makes us unique
mhm.
individuals.
Yeah, and
And
getting to know ourselves on that level, mindfulness can be so helpful for taking a look at who we are and what our reactions are, and not
right,
judging them. I mean, being kind to ourselves about it, but just being aware so we can
right.
heal and we can do things that are going to make us feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love that. So, um, before we end our conversation, what would be one last thing that you would like to tell everybody?
Mm.
Um, you know, Out of everything, what is the most important tip that
Yeah,
Sarah
another
can
tip I
offer?
can give, since there's probably a lot of mamas watching, sometimes
Yeah.
we have mama guilt. I could talk about mama guilt.
Oh my gosh. We
Yeah.
could be here all night with that one.
Yeah, so, that's a thing, it's real, and what I talk to people about, my clients about with guilt is that we really need to look at our value systems. If we're feeling guilty, we need to take a look at our value systems, and
Hmm.
guilt is only happens if we go against our value system. If we didn't go against our value system, it's not guilt, it's shame, and they're different. Guilt is just
Oh,
a true, genuine emotion that actually helps in relationships. I mean, if people didn't feel guilty in relationships, that would probably ruin the relationship. So the guilt, if it's truly guilt, if you truly went against your value system, then you can heal from that guilt. You can make apologies or things like that. But a lot of times, I would say 9 times out of 10, when people go through this process, they
uh-huh.
actually didn't go against their value system. It's actually just shame. It's just that thing in our head that tells us that we're lesser of a person because things just didn't turn out the way, it turned out with your neighbor, or,
Right.
that these emotions are coming up because maybe you've had past trauma. And when we have kids,
Yeah.
it's so re-triggered. The past trauma is so re-triggered. Like if we had trauma at a certain age and our children are that same age, it can be
Mhm.
really difficult. So taking a look at being mindful of what am I kind of thinking and saying about myself, and then immediately coming in with some self-compassion. Just really,
Gotcha.
I am loved, I am worthy, because
Right.
worthiness is not reliant on, is not associated with what we've done right, not with our accomplishments. That's a
Yeah.
misconception. Worthiness is really about how much have we leaned into our hardships, our pain, and our joy. That's
Mhm.
what our worthiness comes from, is our human beings on the planet having a human experience. And so being open to that can be really helpful. And then one other quick thing, if sometimes the other situation with mama guilt is sometimes I work with a lot of mamas, and sometimes the value systems are like, it's just too much. Like they are holding themselves accountable for things that are just unrealistic. Like, right? So part of it is like, why don't I change my value system? And that takes some time. You got to really kind of give into yourself. But yeah, definitely take a
I
look.
I can I am that person because I was like, okay, I'm raising these kids. I have 3 boys, and my whole thought was I got to do my best to raise responsible adults. And I'm sitting here holding them and feeding them a bottle. Okay? So
Mhm.
that's, I mean, like that was from day 1
Yeah,
until they
I know all the
left
pressure,
the
right?
nest. So,
I
I
know.
mean, no wonder I feel like concerned
Mhm,
because that was just my whole thing. And but now as they're adults, I mean, they're fine. They're intelligent people. They could make their own decisions. But now I'm thinking I shouldn't have tried to hold the reins so hard
mhm,
and fast. I should have enjoyed the more of being in the moment with them, you know. And
mhm,
I mean, I can't go back and undo all that, And when I had conversations with some of them, or a couple of them, I just tell them that's just your mom. That was me. I was so worried, that I would make one little mistake and
mhm.
you would be in prison for the rest of your life, because
Oh, yeah, it's real.
I
Yeah,
didn't teach you something.
yeah,
So
yeah, the
yeah,
pressure that we put on ourselves. Yeah, but we care so much. We do it because we care so much, but I think there's just some little tweaking, some exercises that we can all
yeah,
do that can just relieve some of that pressure and make us not feel so, um,
right. Well, I
crazy.
love this. So I'm hoping that there are some other young parents out there listening and they're going to take our advice and not be so guilty, or worry so much, um, and just enjoy their time,
Mhm.
with their kids and their families. But anyway, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if people wanna take that same test as 15 questions, it's
Hmm.
actually on my website and it's free. So
Yeah. And I got your website here. So it's sarahvallely.com.
mhm.
And it's called the Resilience Inventory.
Yes, uh-huh, yeah,
Okay.
it shows where you're high in resilience and where there's some struggle with resilience.
Right.
Mhm,
Right. Yeah, it was I mean, it was just a quick thing that we did, but it was so insightful. And I just love that you felt that there was a need to teach other people, so that they can coach others.
mhm.
Um, it just reminds me of that saying where you could um, feed someone fish and feed someone for a day. But if you teach them how to fish, they can feed themselves for the rest of their lives and feed others.
Yeah, yeah, that's my goal of my coaching I usually work with people for average about 6 sessions. Like it's not a long process. Like I really
Yeah.
get people prepared, like just do this exercise when this comes up, do this exercise when this comes up, and teach the mindset shift. And
Yeah.
they get it. Yeah.
Well, I really love that, Sarah. And again, if you're watching this, please go to www.sarahvallely.com. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. That's not a request, that's a demand. No, it's a request. So, anyway, thank you so much, Sarah. I so appreciate having our conversation today. And I just commend you on doing such a wonderful job with trying to help, you know, one at a time. So,
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for having me on. And I have a podcast too. It's called The Aware Mind on any podcast app. So we dig into a lot of these subjects. But yeah, thank you so much. You've
I
got such
can't
a
believe
great
I forgot
program.
that. I just got done telling her that I listened to her podcast this week.
Yeah, The
It's
Aware
really
Mind.
good. So,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening.
thank you.